Hello, this video is about the emergency mode as one of the modes through which invoices via the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System are issued. This video and the information contained therein are based on a manual issued by the Polish Ministry of Finance, which presents, at least according to my understanding, their expectations as to how the invoices within, amongst others, this mode should be issued. So if this is something for you, then let's start with this. First of all, keep in mind that in total we have within the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System 5 different modes of issuing the invoices. There is the online mode, the offline 24 mode, the offline unavailability mode, the emergency mode, and the total failure mode. In this video we will be discussing the emergency mode as one of the offline modes within the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. As follows from the manual of the Polish Ministry of Finance, the emergency mode will be applicable in case there is some failure in the working of the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. From my point of view, this failure will occur in various ways. For example, you may be able to log into your account to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, but you will see that you cannot issue any invoice. The other alternative, for example, is that you will, while issuing invoices from your software, which is connected to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, you will see that the software sends the invoices, but the invoices were never received by the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, and no unique number was assigned to those invoices by the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. I also understand that this emergency mode may apply in case you are not even able to log into your account in the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, the site is not working, the login is not working, and so on and so forth. This mode will apply once it is announced by the Polish Ministry of Finance in the Bulletin of Public Information of the Polish Ministry of Finance and in the interface software itself. However, I also again understand that if the error will occur in such a way that you will not even be able to log into the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, you won't be able to see this announcement in the software itself. So potentially, not sure, but potentially the only way to be informed about the fact that this mode is applicable for issuance of the invoices, the bulletin of the public information will have to be checked. And of course, this mode, this emergency mode, would only apply if announced. So if the Polish Ministry of Finance is performing service and maintenance works, then the offline unavailability mode is applicable. If there is a total failure announced via public media, the total failure mode is applicable. And of course, if everything is working correctly, the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System is accessible, and therefore the online and the offline 24 modes are working, because the offline 24 mode, despite the fact it is called offline, it is a mode which can be used alternatively to the online mode and is available when the whole system is working. Yeah, of course, in such case, you will simply, when everything is working, you will simply use the online and offline 24 mode. So the emergency mode only applicable once announced by the Polish Ministry of Finance. How is the invoice to be issued? It is similar, analogical to the way the invoice should be issued in case of online, in case of offline 24, in case of offline unavailability mode, namely also in case of emergency mode, being a kind of a offline mode. The invoice is to be issued as a XML file according to the logical structure defined by the Polish Ministry of Finance, which is currently the FA3 structure. And during the period in which the failure mode is applicable, the invoice issued in such a way is provided to the buyer in agreed form. For example, as a visualization in PDF form, or of course, once the invoice is sent to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, because the period in which the emergency mode is to be used ended, then this invoice will be provided and received by the buyer via the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. So how the stages of issuing the invoices within the emergency mode look like? In the first step, there is an announcement made by the Polish Ministry of Finance that the emergency mode enters into force. Then, if the taxable person intends to issue an invoice, this taxable person issues this invoice based on the FA3 structure file and indicates in the P1 field, in the date of issue field, the official invoice issue date. In the next step, the seller, due to the fact that we assume that the emergency mode is still applicable, during this time the seller provides the buyer with the invoice in the agreed form, which most probably usually these times will be a visualization in PDF sent, for example, via email. And then at the end stage, once the emergency mode ended, is not more applicable, and the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System is available, then this, according to the Polish VAT provisions, this invoice is to be sent to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System within 7 working days of the failure ending. In comparison to the offline unavailability mode, which applies when there are service and maintenance works performed by the Polish Ministry of Finance in the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, where you have only 1 working day to send the invoice to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System after the offline unavailability mode has ended. Here you have, in case of emergency mode, taxable persons have 7 working days. So, for example, let us assume we have a taxable person which issued an invoice on 15th of April we assume during the emergency mode was applicable, because the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System was not available, and a public announcement in the Bulletin of Public Information and in the software itself was done by the Polish Ministry of Finance. Then on this 15th of April 2026, the taxable persons issues an invoice, indicates in the P1 field the date of issuance, which is the 15th of April, and assuming that, for example, the emergency mode has ended on 20th of April, then we would have to count 7 days, 7 working days from the day the emergency mode ended, namely from the 20th of April. In terms of deadlines, there is, of course, on one hand, we have this 7 business day deadline, 7 business days after the failure ends, which is the deadline for sending the invoice to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. But of course, on the other hand, please bear in mind that we have also the statutory deadlines for issuance of invoices. And according to the general rule, the invoice should be issued until the 15th day of the month following the month in which the goods or services were sold. Unless, of course, in case of given goods or services, special deadline for invoice issuance apply, then the taxable person has to, of course, keep those deadlines. In terms of keeping those statutory deadlines, please also notice that since the date of the issue of an invoice issued via the emergency mode is the one indicated in the P1 field by the taxable person, this, of course, will also be the date that determines whether the deadline for the invoice issuance was kept or not. Namely, if a taxable person delivered goods on 15th of April and issued the invoice on 15th of May, namely on the 15th day of the month following the month in which the delivery of goods took place. And then, due to, for example, the fact that the emergency mode was applicable on that 15th of May, and the emergency mode ended, for example, on 16th of May, and the taxable person sent the invoice within the deadline of 7 days, for example, on 18th of May to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, this invoice is not deemed to be issued on the 18th of the May, namely at the day the invoice was issued to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, but this invoice is deemed to be issued on the 15th of May, which is in line with the statutory deadlines for invoice issuance. How does the buyer receive this invoice? The buyer received this invoice in agreed form, which is either as a visualization of the invoice, for example, in PDF file, or he receives this invoice through the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. This is, of course, a big difference in comparison to the offline 24 mode and unavailability mode, where there are doubts currently, as of March 2026, when this video is recorded, when the buyer receives such invoice, if this invoice was not sent to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. These doubts currently seem to be solved to the benefit of the buyer, of the client, because currently it seems that the buyer will be able to treat such invoice received outside of the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System before it was sent to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System as received. And consequently, since the invoice was received, he will have the right to deduct input VAT in the month in which this invoice was received. And of course, all the clients which are located, all the buyers, all the clients which are located outside of Poland, in other EU countries, in countries which are not EU member states, or for example also consumers, all of them will be receiving the invoices outside of the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, and therefore for them the date of receipt will always be the actual receipt of the invoice outside of the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System. And if the invoice was provided to the buyer outside of the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, namely as a visualization in PDF form, then this invoice, if it was provided to the buyer before sending to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, this invoice has to indicate two QR codes. One code with the offline description, which is therefore there to enable the buyer to verify the invoice, and the second QR code with the description certificate, which enables the buyer to verify the entity which issued the invoice. And if the invoice is provided to a customer after the moment in which this invoice was sent to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, and the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System has assigned a number to this invoice, then if visualization of such invoice is provided to the client, then this visualization as a PDF file, for example, contains only one QR code. This rule is analogical to the rules of providing visualization of invoices issued in offline 24 and offline unavailability mode, where also in the first stage, before the invoices were sent to the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, their visualization have to indicate two QR codes, and after the invoices were sent and processed by the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System, if after this moment the visualization of the invoice is being provided to some customer, then such visualization after processing by the Polish National Electronic Invoicing System only indicates one QR code. Okay, this is all what I wanted to share with you with respect to the offline emergency mode. I hope this gave you some overview and understanding on how in general this mode works. And have a great day and take care and see you next time. Bye.